From family events to volunteer opportunities to community happenings, there is a lot going on in your community. Learn about all the possibilities and opportunities on this episode of Community Hotline.
Community Hotline. My name is Monica Weitzel, and we're here at Metro East Community Media in Gresham, Oregon. Tonight, we're going to talk first with Friends of Trees. It's a great organization in the local Portland area and beyond. So tonight, to talk with us about that is Whitney Dorer. Welcome, Whitney.
Thanks.
And David Odom. Thanks for being here. Now, you're both staff with Friends of Trees. So, Whitney, I hear you're the boss lady.
Boss lady, yeah, officially.
Okay. What? Tell me a little bit about the history of Friends of Trees, how it started, and what the purpose of your organization is.
Sure. So we started about 22 years ago. This is going
Wow.
into our 22nd planting season, which is really exciting.
I'm amazed. I had no idea it had been around that long.
Yeah, and we were started by someone named Richard Seidman. He wanted to create a community building organization, and he decided to use trees as the tool. So, focusing on community building, but also getting more trees in the ground. And
Can't be a bad thing, huh?
No, having neighbors meeting one another, and so we've been doing that for 22 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long have you been with Friends of Trees?
This is going on my 5th planting season.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. So do you think the people that become involved and volunteer with Friends of Trees, are they mostly interested in the tree aspect of it or the community building aspect of it?
I think we definitely have a both.
Both?
Yeah, we have some people who are there solely for the tree purpose. They're horticulturists, they are botanists or arborists, and they want to be there to get more trees in the ground and teach people about the actual science behind trees.
Right.
And then we also have people who don't know anything about trees but want to be there to meet their neighbors and make a great lunch for our neighbors after the planting event. So,
nice.
A whole array of different volunteers.
David, how long have you been involved?
This is going into my 3rd planting season.
Third planting. So at Friends of Trees, it's all about the planting season, obviously.
It's all about the planting season.
It's all about the planting season.
And we are just ramping up our planting season. We just had our second planting last weekend, just a few days ago, past Saturday.
What neighborhood was that in?
That was in Selwood, Eastmoreland, and Brooklyn neighborhoods down in southeast Portland. And we also use that as our training. So we train our crew leaders who then go out and train people how to plant trees. So I'm involved with the training. I'm a certified arborist, and I train people that are interested in becoming trained to plant trees. So we train the trainer.
You train the trainer. Okay, so tell me how this works. If somebody wants to be a volunteer with Friends of Trees, and they want to be involved with the planting, what are some of the volunteer opportunities, and what kind of training do they have to go through, and what's involved?
There's loads of opportunities to be involved volunteering with Friends of Trees. If they specifically want to be involved with the planting, all they need to do is literally show up to the planting day, which you can find at friendsoftrees.org/calendar. And we have 22 or so plantings coming up between November and April, through
When you
April.
say plantings, you're talking about different neighborhoods?
Different
Not
neighborhoods.
individual trees. We're talking about a whole bunch of trees in individual neighborhoods.
Individual neighborhoods. Actually, we group neighborhoods, like the early one had
like
Selwood.
Brooklyn, and Eastmoreland, yeah.
So we group them together based on geography and how many trees that we think we're going to be able to plant on that particular planting day. Planting day is always Saturdays, usually about 9 to 1. And folks can, if they're interested in planting, they can just show up. If they'd like to get a little more skill development and internal to our organization, they can show up and become a crew leader with us, which happens early season, like I just mentioned the other week. There's another training coming up the 19th in Vancouver, because we do a lot of planting in Vancouver, actually. So we're training more crew leaders up there. And then there's also folks that can volunteer to bring refreshments or help at the staging site. There's folks that can drive to the nursery the day before and pick up the tree stock. We buy all of our trees from nurseries all within about 100 miles of us. Nice. So it's all Willamette Valley grown plants. And that being said, last year we had about 3,000 individual volunteer contacts, individual volunteers that put about 30,000 hours of volunteers into our volunteer hours into our organization.
That's a lot.
That's the equivalent of about 150 full-time employees.
That's huge. So about how many crew leaders do you have?
Right around 200.
Wow. Yeah. So what's the area that you serve? Friends of Trees. I mean, what area does?
Yeah, so we serve the Portland metro area. We serve anywhere from, you know, the more east neighborhoods in Portland, and then also up to Vancouver, and even including some Beaverton plantings.
You ever come out to the Gresham area?
You know, we did 2 years ago, and actually last year we had a couple of plantings out in Gresham.
Good.
And they were really nice. Yeah.
Well, I live in Portland, but if I lived in Gresham and I wanted to have new trees put in my front yard, and I wanted to go through Friends of Trees, would you be able to do that? Do you have to wait till there's a certain number of people in that area that want to have trees, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, we do have one volunteer position that David didn't mention called a neighborhood coordinator. And this person is someone who's very important to Friends of Trees. They are the link between Friends of Trees and the actual neighborhood that they live in. And so we have different neighborhood coordinators for all the different neighborhoods we work in. And when we do want to expand to a new neighborhood, we ask that somebody from that neighborhood become a neighborhood coordinator and get their neighbors involved so that we have enough trees to plant and make it a successful planting.
That's a lot involved, isn't there, to get that? You know, and I was sharing with you earlier that my daughter had a couple of trees planted with Friends of Trees about a year and a half ago, and you know, the whole family came out, and we planted trees for her and for other people in her neighborhood. Got to meet some of her neighbors that she didn't know, and she lives in the house that she grew up in, and so and I don't live there anymore, but I got to meet some of the neighbors too, and it was a really, really fun experience, and we were lucky it was a nice day, and because that doesn't always happen, I'm sure. So do you plant? Well, tell me about your planting seasons. How? All year long, certain times of year? What is it?
Generally from November through April, occasionally into May, but generally we like to be done by April. The planting season in the Pacific Northwest, at least in the maritime climate of the Pacific Northwest, is best when it's raining. The trees are dormant, so they're not going to go through as much as a transplant shock as they would if they were full leaf in the middle of summer. And then they get irrigated all winter long. The ground's easier to dig unless it's frozen. It's easier to dig when it's wet. And so we plant the trees. The trees then wake up in the spring. They start budding and throwing roots out, and they're establishing much quicker than a tree if we were trying to plant it full leaf in the middle of the hottest day in July.
And you being an arborist should know that, right?
So we plant primarily in the winter.
Okay.
And last year we planted about 4,600 trees, which is an enormous amount of trees.
It surely is.
And we had and we also have another volunteer role as a summer inspector, where we again train folks to go out and look at all the 4,600 trees that we have planted.
Really?
And we trained about 130 people last year to do that. And we have
after they've been planted, they're following up on it.
Yeah, we're following up with each and every tree we try and get to. And we had a success rate of 97%.
That's wonderful. That's very impressive.
Which is a very impressive survivability rate, sometimes it's even better than commercial.
Well, you get very good instructions. And speaking of planting trees, we have a video that you brought, and it is, I think this would be a good time to show that so we can show other people how they can plant their trees.
Yeah,
okay, let's take a look at that now.
Okay.
Friends of trees, we aim to please. Plant the right tree in your yard. Going great and green will change your scene. It's super easy, it's not hard.
Planting a tree is fun and easy, as long as you know what you're doing. When you plant with Friends of Trees, our trained crew leaders will show you step by step. But what if you're not planting with Friends of Trees? This video will show you how. Be sure to remove any plastic tags and prune off any broken branches.
Oh, great.
First, you'll need to know how big to dig the hole. For balled and burlap trees, carefully loosen the burlap and then dig down until you find the top root or root flare. Now dig a hole just as deep as that top root and twice as wide as the root ball. As you dig, keep the grass on one side and the soil on the other. Check for proper planting depth by measuring the height of the first major root against the initial hole depth using a stake or tool handle. Adjust your planting hole as needed to ensure that the top root will be level with the top of the surrounding soil. Score the sides of the hole so roots can penetrate. Now set the tree in the hole using the burlap. If there's a small wire basket, you can remove that prior to putting the tree in the hole. But if it's a big one, you'll want to cut it off once it's in the hole. Now carefully remove the burlap by rocking the tree to one side, tucking the burlap under, and then rocking the tree to the other side and pulling the burlap out. Be careful not to break the root ball during this process. Now straighten the tree and support it with some soil down at the bottom. You can compact this soil a little bit. Now finish adding soil, breaking up any big chunks, and don't compact too much. We use the grass and any remaining soil to create a berm around the outside. If you can get rid of the grass, that's even better. Now add 5 to 10 gallons of water, letting it soak in slowly. Then add a couple inches of mulch, but make sure the mulch doesn't touch the trunk of the tree. At Friends of Trees, we stake every tree we plant. This protects it a little bit from cars and lawnmowers and holds it upright in any heavy windstorms. When we tie the knot, we make sure it's very loose, giving the tree a little bit of flexibility so it knows that it needs to grow a strong root system. At Friends of Trees, we add a sticker reminding the homeowner how to maintain the tree and telling the neighbors what type of tree it is. And now there's only one last step. Dance.
Aim to please, plant the right tree in your yard from gray to green. We'll change your scene. It's super easy, it's not hard.
Want to improve your neighborhood? Plant a tree. Log on to friendsoftrees.org to find the right tree for your yard. So come on, plant it, Portland.
And Vancouver, too!
I love the dancing. The dancing is great. So tell me, David, you're the arborist. How important is the dance and song at the end of the planting to the survival of the tree?
The tree dance is vital. It's vital to community building more than the tree's health.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I guess that's...
Yeah, it's more important because it helps. I mean, one of the things that we do is we really build community. Like you were talking about when you planted, you met neighbors and you were at the house that you've known for a long time and met the new people. And, you know, it's really about building community. We just build community through trees. And so some folks end up dancing.
I love it. That's fun.
And they're also getting dirt off the bottom of their shoes at the same time.
Well, that's so smart.
Yeah.
So Whitney, there are plantings coming up. Which ones do you have coming up soon?
Yeah, so we've got a bunch of plantings from now until April, and they can be found at friendsoftrees.org/calendar. We do have a couple that we want to highlight, though. On January 14th, we've got a planting in the Lentz and Powellhurst-Gilbert neighborhoods.
Out this way.
On the 28th of January, we have a Centennial, Hazelwood, and Mill Park planting. And then in March, we have a planting in Argay, Park Rose Heights, Russell, Sumner, and Wilkes.
So East County is being served by Friends of Trees.
Definitely.
Good deal.
And that last planting in March is a really special one in that we're offering free trees to all of those neighborhoods.
Really?
So anyone who's in one of those neighborhoods and is interested in free.
So which neighborhoods were those again? Better repeat those.
It was Argay, Park Rose Heights, Russell, Sumner, and Wilkes.
Okay.
And those trees are free street trees.
That's amazing.
And $35 for yard trees.
Free street trees and $35 for yard trees. What a great deal.
Yeah, it's very affordable.
Very, very expensive.
And we have really high quality. Like I mentioned before, all of our nurseries are local, and you know the Oregon Nursery Association Oregon Association of Nurseries is a fantastic group, and there's a really great, tremendous amount of quality growers here in the state of Oregon, specifically the Willamette Valley. And so for $35, you're getting a really well-grown tree. You're supporting the local economy with jobs, you know, and the shipping and the growing of the tree.
It's good for our air quality.
Good for the air quality, good for the water quality. You know, it shades pavement, it shades your house. You'll use less energy when you're
Added
air
value to your
conditioning.
house, better curb appeal.
It increases the
it.
value of your property.
Good.
Yep. There's social scientists that study children that have a view of a tree outside of a school, that they learn and retain knowledge better.
Really?
Folks that are in hospitals will recover more quickly if they have a view of a tree outside of a window. There's all sorts of benefits of
Better
trees.
than a dumpster, you think?
Better than a dumpster.
Okay, just checking. So I know when my daughter planted, they got American smoke trees, which I didn't even know what they were, but right now they're absolutely gorgeous. They're orange and they're beautiful. How many different kinds of trees do you have to plant?
It's
Do
a
people
great
get a choice?
question.
Or?
Yep, they have a choice.
Okay.
If it's for their planting strip, so the area between the back of the curb and the sidewalk, that's the planting strip. It depends on the width of that planting strip. So
Okay.
anything as narrow as 2.5 feet wide up. Some neighborhoods in Portland are blessed with 8-foot wide planting strips,
Wow.
so those are giant. The other factor that goes into tree selection is the presence or absence of overhead utility wires.
Yes.
So if there's specifically electrical wires, the electric utility is required by federal law to eliminate the conflict of trees growing
That
into the
makes
lines.
sense,
And so we are working with, sort of a concept of right tree in the right place. So to put shorter growing trees under wires, and
you
so they
make the
don't have to get up in there.
recommendations or tell them what their options
So we
are.
have filled lists,
Oh, okay,
and so it
good.
depends on the width and the height that they can go. And there's, I think 6 or 7 different lists of trees, and we have 110 different tree species.
Wow. You know what? We're already out of time. And I have so many more questions. So just tell me, first of all, if people want to get involved with Friends of Trees, go to your website.
Best place for it, yeah.
Okay.
Friendsoftrees.org.
And they can sign up. And then I understand if they want to be part of the plantings for this year, they need to sign up by December 5th, I think.
Yeah, I would say, for that first planting in the Lentz and Pelhurst-Gilbert neighborhood, signing up online by December would be great so that
Okay.
we can get them ready.
Good. I'm sorry this went so fast because I have a lot more questions, but thank you, David and Whitney, so much for
Yeah.
being on the show tonight. If you're interested in Friends of Trees, the information will be on your screen. You can take a look at their website. You can get involved as a volunteer. You can get a wonderful tree, and if you're in one of those neighborhoods in March, you might be able to get a free tree. So don't go away. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Community Hotline.